You are listening to the What a Word podcast, an interview style podcast where guests bring their unique experiences and insight on culture, life's challenges, and faith. Each episode is seasoned with words which will inspire and encourage. Now, here is your host, Ryan Sharp.
Welcome to the What a Word podcast. Honored as always to be in this space, sharing light on culture, faith, life challenges. Each week, this interview style podcast brings a variety of guests from different walks of life. And I'm honored today to have a good friend of mine, Sean Farrow. We met a number of years ago at trial advocacy clinic, very intensive. He's an attorney, currently an associate at a very prestigious firm, and I'll allow him to get more into that. But we met when we were both public defenders, and we connected in a number of ways, and we kept in touch, and I'm honored to have him on the podcast. Before we get into it, though, there's something that came across my feed when I was on social media, and I'm hoping it will bring some encouragement to someone. The author of the post asked the question, when was the last time you sat and gave yourself credit for how much you've grown and how far you've come? When was the last time you celebrated a relatively small win just because? When was the last time you just sat down and said out loud, I'm really, really proud of myself? And that gave me a lot of encouragement because as I think about my own journey, there are a lot of things I have to celebrate. And I'll say to you, if wherever you are, if you are watching on YouTube, if you're listening, celebrate those small wins. And if they don't come to mind readily, I'm celebrating on your behalf. Keep it going, keep up the good work, don't give up, celebrate those small wins. And I want to celebrate the wins of my brother as well, who joins me. So much has happened since we last met. Sean, welcome to the podcast. Glad to have you, man.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for having me. Good to see you early this morning. On a Sunday too, but it's well worth it. And I'm happy to be here and I'm honored to be here. Thank you, brother.
Welcome, man. Welcome. What do you have to say about small wins, man? You and I are in a very demanding field, and we're going to unpack a lot of what it means to be public defenders, advocates, etc. But talk about small wins.
Yeah, man. I'm glad you brought that up, and that post and you speaking about it really just resonated with me because at the beginning of my career, I struggled with that. I struggled with trying to understand how to celebrate myself, how to acknowledge my own value, my own worth. And I thought that I had to win the big case right off the bat. I thought I had to be just, the lawyer you saw on TV right away. And not realizing that there's a steep learning curve. And if you don't celebrate the small wins, it becomes really, really tough, right? Because you can get down on yourself and you bring negative thoughts, negative energy, negative emotions to yourself. And that can make something that's already challenging that much more. So in celebrating the small wins in the last few years, especially with COVID giving me time to think and take care of mental health, I realized that we must, to your point, celebrate the small wins in order to just continue to build ourselves up, all right, and build up the people next to us. So for me, I started celebrating the small wins wherever and whenever I can find them. So, this past week, we got a fortunate guilty verdict on one of our trial cases with the partners here. But what did the partners do well? Those were some of the small victories in terms of just preparation was incredible. The cross-examination was fantastic. Summation, opening, just the way they put the whole trial together was truly, impressive to watch. Those are small wins. The fact that we as a small boutique law firm came together and we were working on this trial as a team, that was a small win within itself. It's little things like that that maybe don't make it onto the scoreboard, but nonetheless do add value, do add up at the end of the day. And you can look back and say, you know what, it was worth it. Here was my value. Here's where I contributed. And it's something that you really can be proud of, because we're not always going to get the W. We're not always going to have this breakthrough moment, right? We're not going to have this perfect soundbite. But when you can celebrate the small wins, you can see how you are growing. You can see how you are advancing. You can see how you are sharpening your tools, and just how every day you're just getting better. And I guess I would finish up by saying this: when you look back at your life and you put in the work and the time, you can really sit back and be proud of all the things, because you kept going in the face of adversity. You kept going, and those small victories are what are going to be, I guess, your benchmarks for which you can check yourself. And so I look at it for every opportunity. This past week, I had a few. And so I don't take that lightly. I take that into the next week, and we keep moving forward.
So you and I met a number of years ago at trial advocacy clinic, 1 week, very intensive up in Albany. Man, okay, so for starters, you and I were both public defenders at that time. There are a lot of misconceptions about the work we do as public defenders. And I learned something that weekend, and you and I have discussed this before. There are not many of us as public defenders.
No.
That blew me away when I learned the numbers of people of color who actually serve underrepresented people, so to speak, or people who are unable to afford the services, who have our Constitution affords them the right to counsel. But I honestly thought individuals who desire to serve in public interest had an easy access to that field, but not so. And I'm sure you can unpack that for listeners and viewers.
Yeah, being a public defender, especially as a person of color, it was the most rewarding job that I've ever had, but also the most challenging job that I've ever had. And, you know, it's not that I'm at a loss for words. I just want to make sure that I articulate exactly what it meant to be a public defender in general, but more specifically as a man of color, representing mostly other men of color. And every day you walked into court, every day you got a phone call from someone who genuinely needed your help. And to be able to be there for them, you can't put a price on that. These are people that they could be your brother, your cousin, your father. You know, there was just a special bond and special connection with so many of those clients. But at the same time, the system is what the system is. And so you're dealing with just ridiculously high caseloads, under-resourced offices. And so you're not surprised when you don't see other people of color, because it's a hard job. It's a thankless job. You ain't going to get paid very well. Oftentimes, and I can speak to my experience, but I've heard my brothers and sisters in the field from New York to New Orleans, out way west, like, we're not necessarily valued in our office. We're not appreciated in our office. So you're kind of walking into this cold environment within your own office. And then when you get to court, you're kind of walking them into enemy territory. So it's a very unwelcoming, very uninviting place for us to be. And knowing that many of us have navigated these treacherous waters that are life, especially as a person of color, and then we've also navigated these landmines that are living in the white world and being educated in the white spaces, it becomes exhausting and tiring when you're doing that day in and day out now as a public defender. And again, nobody's saying thanks. Hell, half the time your clients aren't saying thanks. And you can kind of understand why. Stuff is very difficult, but it's tough. And I'm not shocked whenever I see the low numbers of representation from the people of color. It kind of makes sense. There is little to no incentive beyond your own desire to be in this space. That's just a reality I think that we all have to acknowledge. And I think that's a reality many of us do acknowledge. But I will say, and I'm going back to my first point, that's why I led with it. It was worth it. It was worth it every single day. I did not hesitate to get up one day. I did not hesitate to go to sleep. And I know many of my colleagues, especially my colleagues of colors, that's how they felt too. That no matter what the odds were against us, no matter how many hurdles were in our place or in our client's place, it was worth it knowing that we are helping someone that looks like us. That was powerful. That resonated with us. That motivated us. And so I think at the same time, we're very lucky and very fortunate to have had the opportunity to be there with so many of our people.
Love that, man. Love that. Sean, I'm going to ask you to address some of the myths. I'm sorry to keep taking you back to what it was like, but some of the myths of public defenders. And I guess I could touch on maybe 3 and ask you to cover those, but one being that we're not real lawyers.
That pissed me off. You know, I'll keep it a buck. You can start there. That pissed me off, especially as a person of color. I remember so many times in my career as a public defender, clients, whether they be white or black, would oftentimes ask for, you know, a white Jewish lawyer. And it just kind of added to the myth or just re-stigmatized us as we're not real lawyers. I got a degree too. I put that work into. I took that bar too. And I won some cases too. I can go toe to toe with anybody in that courtroom. It doesn't matter if you're Ivy League educated or you went to, you know, some local law school. It don't matter. When we enter that courtroom, we all equals, and your skills are going to shine versus my skills. And I tell you this, it just drove me crazy to think that we're not real lawyers. Some of the best lawyers are public defenders. I'm sorry, there are some dope public defenders. 2 of my roommates are both dope public defenders, and I would put them toe to toe with anybody that gets paid. I get paid right now. I just left the legal aid job just a few months ago. I get paid right now. I will put them toe to toe with me because they're that good. What people have to understand is law is no different than any other field. Some people are very good at their job. Some people are, you know, mediocre. Some people are bad. You just hope that the person you get is just really good. And just because you pay someone a bunch of money doesn't mean they're actually good at that job. Doesn't mean anything. The best lawyers, well, you'll know who they are because you're going to hear their name before you ever see them. You're going to have no questions, no concern. The judge is going to know. Opposing counsel is going to know. The court officers are going to know, right? Everybody knows who's a good lawyer. So it's just the idea that just because you have a public defender that you don't have perhaps one of the best attorneys in the game, that's a common misconception. I think a lot of people end up setting themselves up for failure by trying to go after lawyers who are just not really equipped to handle the job, and they're not quality. So yeah, that has always rubbed me the wrong way. Public defenders, more often than not, they're very good. And what makes them even better is that they're not motivated by anything other than the fact that they care. I think that's a powerful tool within itself. So you have people that are talented and they care. Yeah, I think you got a good recipe right there for success.
Oh, powerful, man, powerful. The other myth, we're pleading people out because we have high case volumes.
All right, I'm gonna take a moment on that one because there is some merit to that myth. There are some attorneys that are just overworked, do have high caseload, and for those reasons will plead people out. I can announce that. But here's one caveat that we must make absolutely clear. That's not the main reason. If we're talking about most cases, anywhere from 95% to 98% of cases across the country in any given space are pleading out. Of that 95 to 98%, 95 to 98% of that is because of the system. Because when you have a case, you have to deal with the fact that there's a mountain of evidence, the fact that they will overcharge you, they being a prosecutor, so they force you to take a plea in that sense. The fact that they scare you with the number of years you could face, even for low-level stuff. The fact that police officers can lie and get away with it with impunity. The fact that judges can be against you and keep certain evidence out. And listen, I understand we have an appeal process, but you'd be waiting all day for the appeal. So the idea that the system is such that you have to plead in the most ironic sense ever in order to spend the less time possible behind bars. You have to admit it. Even if you didn't do nothing wrong, you have to admit it to get less time. The system is designed so that people plead out, not because public defenders are just tired and they don't care about you, they don't care about your case, so let's plead it out. Nah, the reality is, if 99%, like to keep throwing out numbers, 99% of public defenders would try every case if they could. If they had the bandwidth, if they had the energy, if they had the same resources that the prosecutor had, they would try every case. They want to. We all want to try those cases. We can't. And who am I to sit there and advise a client to go to trial and risk their life and risk more time in jail if we lose, which we lose most of the time, even when the facts are on our side? How can I advise them to take that risk when, if they plead out, maybe they're home in a year versus 5? Maybe they don't go to jail at all instead of going to jail for 2 years. That's not my life. I don't go home with them every night. I don't raise their kids. I'm not in that community. So how can I tell them, nah, you got to take this risk? By the way, we got to deal with the cops, and the cops are going to say X, Y, and Z against you. By the way, this judge, oh, he or she doesn't just like me. They don't like defense. They don't like these cases. Oh, that prosecutor, yeah, they're not going to give you a better plea deal because they don't have to. The odds are stacked against you, my friend. Like, I'm trying to put you in the best position moving forward. And so it's not because we want to plead you out. It's because oftentimes the environment is such that that is the best position for you. And I have to think about, as your lawyer, just like any lawyer, what is best for you? Not just today, but tomorrow and next week and next year. What is best for you? What is best for your family? And most of the time it's taking a plea, even if neither one of us want that. So yeah, it's not us, it's the system. The system, people oftentimes say the system is broken. No, the system's not broken. It's working as it's designed. We're trying to break it. Every one of us is trying every single day to break this machine and chip at it. It's hard, it takes time, it takes a lot of our energy, but we're doing it slowly but surely. In the meantime, until we can fully dismantle this thing, yeah, people are going to continue to get swept up and have to take pleas because it's just the best position for them to be in, even if we don't agree with it. Hell, they may not agree with it, may not have done anything wrong, but I want to put you in a better chance of moving forward tomorrow than if we go to trial and lose, because that's a hard pill to swallow. To go to trial and lose and you end up doing more time, that's a very, very tough pill to swallow. So yeah, that's a common myth. It's not us, it's a system. It's a system intelligently designed to break our communities.
Powerful, man. And it's not lost on me that looking on someone, because this podcast does this for a lot of young people. They get to see people who look like them in a variety of fields. And I think Sean has given you enough encouragement, and he's addressed some of the myths up front that quote unquote free lawyers, public pretenders are actually very competent, are actually very competent. The Constitution affords you our services, especially if you don't have the funds. Um, we come into play because you should not be representing yourself when you are subject to up to a year in jail, etc. You should have the representation of someone who is qualified, even if that person comes at no cost to you. And then finally, here's what I'll touch on. I think you've addressed a lot, and we could get into search, stop and, stop
We can
and
go
frisk.
wherever you want to take this. I'm flexible. Let's get it.
Yeah, for sure. But I'll address that. We do get a lot of good wins, and in light of what the intro started off with, a person comes to us with a case. We are looking at whether the stop and the search was lawful. We're looking at speedy trial issues. We're looking at whether the charge itself, as Sean indicated, is overcharged, whether all the elements are met. There's a lot that goes into every case. But I'll tell you one other thing. We don't become public defenders because we are trying to become district attorneys. That's another myth I heard the other day.
We're trying to become DAs. We're working with the DAs. We're in the same group. We go out to drinks together. Look, that kind of going back to that first myth, that's another one that like tinges at the soul a little bit. Nah, man, we're not friends with the DAs, but what we are is we're collegial, right? At the end of the day, at the state level, let me back up a little bit. Even at the federal level, there's so much weight and power that the DA has or that the prosecutor has. That's part of why the system is really messed up. They have so much power. We can get into whether or not they decide to even bring charges and just how that power dynamic works out, especially as it pertains to race. But when you're in the court battle, before you really even get to the judge and see the kind of power they wield, you're dealing with the prosecutor. What charges are you bringing? What offers are you making? What evidence do you have? When the evidence is getting turned over? Your case, your ability to practice in this case is largely dependent upon the prosecutor and what they decide to do or not to do. It's so contingent on them. So the idea that we, because we're friendly, are working with them, no, we're not in that sense. We're not trying to be buddy and throw our person under the bus. What we're trying to do is hopefully get this prosecutor to a place and a space where they feel comfortable making the kind of offer, if we're going down the plea route, that we want, or making them feel comfortable that they give us the kind of information that makes us prepare for trial a little bit easier, right? Because they can truly, excuse my language, make our life a living hell if they want to on every case. So it's not that I want to befriend them and I want to go out to drinks with them. No, my man, I'm usually doing it for your benefit so they don't hate me, because the last thing I need is for them to hate you and hate me, because then nobody's winning. And I've done a great disservice to you. I have to make sure that we can work across the aisle so that way they do what I'm asking to do, whether it's no jail time, whether it's a certain plea, whether it's a program, whether it's writing a letter, if we're in federal court, of mitigation on behalf of, essentially you, the client, to the judge, right? Whether it's standing up in front of court and asking the judge for a particular sentence or to deviate from, I guess, the sentencing range or guidelines, right? If I'm going to ask them to do that, they got to feel comfortable with me. They got to like me. They got to appreciate the hard work that I'm putting in. So, yeah, I'm sorry that it always seems like we're working with them and we're aspiring to be in their shoes. But I trust, believe that is far from the case. And in my years of practice, I have never, ever heard of a defense attorney turned prosecutor. Never heard of that. I'm sure it exists, but it ain't exist in my world. I've heard about plenty of prosecutors, usually to make money, coming over to be defense attorneys. but I never heard the other way around. So trust, believe, we are not trying to become district attorneys. There's something about the way we think and the way we feel as defense attorneys that put us on that path from day one, and we don't go elsewhere. Once we a defense attorney, we may do other types of law, but we always defense attorneys in our hearts. It doesn't feel right going on the other side. And I don't think many of us could ever look ourselves in the mirror if we went on to the other side. We can't go from trying to keep everybody out of jail and trying to protect them to then trying to put people into jail. It just doesn't compute with our minds. So yeah, that's a common myth. That's one near and dear to my soul.
Awesome, man. And I'm hoping at the end, if there is a young person who is thinking of law, that they won't remove that option from the table. Consider it if you are, especially criminal defense work. Being a public defender is one of the best ways to get invaluable experience. And the volume, while it may seem overwhelming at times, sometimes the volume helps you to develop multitasking skills. Your negotiation gets sharper. And sometimes you're seeing the habits of the district attorney, in terms of what the facts are. You know what to work with in terms of getting the offer or resolving the case in the best way for your client. So
can I jump in on that point?
Jump in on that, man, please.
Man, look, the skills that you learn from being a public defender is they're so invaluable, right? The confidence in which I operate in the day-to-day life now, I feel like there's nothing I can't do because of what I learned. So to your point, yeah, I had a bunch of cases and it drove me crazy, but I learned how to handle all those cases. So now when I have a few cases, my time management skills are unbelievable at this point. The fact that I had so many cases and went to trial so often, my court skills, my ability to open and close, my ability to cross-examine witnesses and get that information out is incredible. My research skills is on point because all I had to do and all I could do was research, whether it's heat of the moment in court on trial, or whether I got like 2 days to prepare or just lunchtime to prepare. I can keep going all day about the skills in which we learn. And in the moment, you're not thinking about that. You're just like, damn, I got more work to do. And that's your only focus. But when you have a moment and you sit back and you look at some of the years that you spent being a public defender, you realize like, whoa, like I'm pretty dope at this job in terms of just generally being a lawyer because of everything I had to do day in and day out as a public defender. And I just kept building on that and building on that. We are really talented lawyers and we can do more things that other people can't do. We can write with the best of them. We can certainly talk with the best of them. We have an amazing court presence, but we have the ability to connect with people because that's what we did on a daily basis. And we can do everything in between. The skills are transferable to any other field of law. And I think it really does set us apart. My partners at the firm, when they were thinking about hiring people, one of the reasons why they hired me is because I had those skills from being a public defender. I got that court stuff covered. I got the back office stuff covered too. Like I have all those skills because I had to develop them. In order to be a competent, qualified attorney, I had to have all of those skills. And so I am thankful for being a public defender because it's given me the training to be where I'm at now and to continue to go where I'm going, the experience, and most importantly, to sum it all up, it's given me the confidence. There is nobody here on God's green earth that I don't think that I can go toe to toe with because of the skills I've learned. I really think and I really believe in my own abilities thanks to being a public defender. And I don't know that I would be in the same position talking to you as confidently as I am if I wasn't a public defender. We have the best training, period.
We're going to give them everything they need, Sean. I think public defenders who listen will connect, definitely.
Yeah.
You touched on something, though, in the beginning about being in those spaces.
Yep.
Where imposter syndrome is real, not only in the law school setting, but in the workforce as well. I want to take you back now to the law school setting. And here's how I'll ask this.
Mhm.
Is there, and I'm sure if there's a laundry list, let me know as well. What do you appreciate now looking back at your law school experience? Or I
Black
can ask
people,
it this way too.
black
Is
people.
there something you wish you had known before going into law school that is a part of your experience now that you wish you had known back then?
So there's two questions there. I'll answer the first one because I started to. The thing that I appreciated most about my law school experience was Black people. My Black colleagues there, my Black teachers, my Black support staff. That was a dope experience. I don't think I ever in my wildest dreams could have even thought that that would be my experience. So you're in this white space per usual, right? You know, and I say per usual because a lot of us went to suburbs. We don't go to suburbs. You know, we went to get our undergrad degree in a white space, right? A lot of our friends happen to be white. And there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes you lose that kind of connection you're looking for. If you will, you lose that sense of home a little bit, you know? And there's something to be said when you're around your brothers and sisters that you can just relate to, and they understand things on a different level, on a different plane, and they share your experiences. When I got into law school and during my 3 years, the Black students, when I say Black, that's all encompassing people of color, right? We all get together, we all one same. We became like a family. You know, we're studying together. We're going out for drinks and dinner together. We're out dancing together. We are motivating each other. We're listening to each other. We are healing each other. We are holding each other accountable. It was such a supportive family, and I'm very lucky that I personally had that experience. But that's the thing that I most appreciate about law school is that you know you're going through this gauntlet that is just law school. You know you're dealing with these very uncomfortable white spaces. Most of the time you're one, if not the only, you know, you're the only person of color. Sometimes you're one of maybe 2 or 3 out of a class of 100. And that support for when things go down, because that's life, was invaluable. And to have those people to celebrate those small wins was, you know, again, you can't put a price on that. I was so appreciative because it helps you in so many ways be able to navigate those 3 years and get through what is really a grueling process. One test of skills and ability, but also a test of endurance. And so you're running a marathon that is called life. But in this time frame that we have life, we decide to run this 3-year sprint, and it's a sprint. It's fast. It's hard moving. It takes a lot of energy, and you need those people who are championing you, who make you feel worth it, who make you feel valued, who give you that energy boost, if you will, to keep going even when you don't want to. So I'm entirely appreciative of my team, and I say team, my family at law school, for everything that they did for me, and I hope I was able to in turn do my part for each one of them. I think so. And I hope one day that they can let me know that I did. You asked the second question in terms of what I wish I would have known. I guess that's a tough question. And I just want to take a moment to make sure that I, again, articulate it correctly, because I have thought about this. The most important thing that I know now that I wish I would have known in law school, and it deals with imposter syndrome, is that it's okay to be you. It's okay to walk how you walk, think how you think, and because we're lawyers, talk how you talk. The fact that we get told, we get chastised or criticized because we talk differently, and I mean that both orally, but also in our writing, that can contribute to imposter syndrome. That can make you feel less value or less worthy because this person that's looking at your writing doesn't necessarily agree with it. The best thing that, you know, teachers, advisors, mentors can do is to not only reinforce and reinstill that a person can be and should be themselves, but to make them or help them find their voice and let them communicate their voice in their ideas, their way to the greater world. That's what I think I wish I would have known, because here I was trying to go to my default. I grew up in white spaces. The safe play for me was always to talk white, write white, think white, and that was the right answer. But I realized that's not the right answer. And that contributed to my own sense of imposter syndrome. Instead, I can talk the way I talk, and it can be just as good, if not better, than how these other folks walk, talk, and write. So I think, to me, that is the most important lesson I've learned. One of the most important lessons I've learned now, and one of the most important lessons that I hope to articulate back to those in law school coming up after me, that it's okay to be you. And in fact, I want you to be you. Talk how you want to talk, and you're going to be just fine.
Powerful, man, because and sobering at the same time, especially for me who speaks with a strong Jamaican accent.
I love it.
You can imagine the pressure I felt trying to just fit in, man. And it was understated, because it's not conscious to you sometimes that you're actually trying to fit in so many different spaces. The other thing I also learned recently is, asserting dignity, man. Because you've worked this hard, you've gotten into a space where you're wondering a lot of times if people feel you belong. And some of them will state directly or indirectly that it's some affirmative action thing, etc. The school is just making an effort to become more diverse, etc. And you're fighting against that battle as well. And what comes with that sometimes is the subtle and not so subtle disrespect, which I endured in law school. Now, that framed the narrative for my court experiences.
Yep.
When I thought, okay, the judge is shouting unnecessarily at me, but this is a part of what it means to work in the system. And lately, I've been pushing back.
The reality is, folks are going to use whatever they can to justify their devaluing of us, or their dehumanization of us, especially as it relates to this space, but really in any space. So it's, you went to this law school, you don't make this money, you're not at this firm, you're not this, you're not that. Like, the list goes on. The sky's gray. And that's why I can say what I'm saying to you, right? Like, they will use anything and everything to justify why we are somehow less than, especially as lawyers, than our white counterparts. And the reality is, first of all, one, a lot of these white folks have had one of the most incredible starts in human history, right? Like, off of our backs. And so the idea that they then turn around and say that you are somehow this affirmative action pick, it's like, that's it. In order to, level the playing field just a little bit, I maybe got this preferential treatment to get into school, but I still had to perform. It wasn't like my test got added bonus because I checked off a box saying I'm Black. None of us got that. So we took the same test as you. Don't be mad because I'm in your space and I'm dominating. Don't get mad at me. I'm just trying to level the playing field that is so unfairly placed in favor of you. And I'm trying to open up a door so I can get through that otherwise you wouldn't open for me. And you got every other door closed. So if the fact that I am an affirmative action, student, so be it. That's the only advantage, if you will, that we have. And that is not really an advantage. It's really leveling the playing field, because I don't have the same head start you have. I don't always have the same resources you have. And I damn sure don't have the connections you have. I didn't come from, and like many of my brothers and sisters, we do not have lawyers in our family. We are the first of our kind. So the fact that we don't have any doors open to us, except for maybe this little doggy door at the bottom, for which a lot of us enter through, unfortunately, that's not an advantage. That's just trying to make things a little bit more fair. But at the end of the day, just like you, we got to prove ourselves, and we got to do better than you guys in order to justify our worth and our value, which we know isn't right, but that is still a reality that we face. So I hate the fact that people take shots at us, especially us public defenders, especially us public defenders of color, and somehow try to always justify that we are not as quality or as good or as worthy or as valued as some of our white counterparts, when the reality is that person of color is really dope because they're used to that work. They're used to having to prove themselves, and they can, and we do. And so I just want people to keep that in mind, that usually that person of color, they're usually 10 times better than their white counterparts because they've had to work so hard to be in that space, and more importantly, stay in that space. That's usually a dope person that you're thinking about. So I push back on that all the time. And I'm glad you push back, Ryan, because we need more of that. We need to stop taking that BS from people, myself included at times. Yes, we can't push back every single time in every single space. I get that, right? It's all about time and place, but we need to start pushing back more because we deserve to be here and we're going to stay here. So we need to make sure that we start making sure that we feel comfortable here and the people coming after us feel comfortable here. So yeah, it's time for us to continue, time for us to really start speaking out and cementing our place here.
And you mentioned something also, and Sean, kudos to you, man. You've given us a lot of nuggets, a lot of gems already. There's something you said that I don't want to miss out on, though. The cost of doing this, not only emotionally, financially, and otherwise. Is there a caveat you would give to that young person of color who wants to enter into this field? Because, so here's the other thing that we often hear, you and I being the first in our families, etc. You argue a lot, you speak well, you should become an attorney.
Yep.
What is there a caveat though that we should give to those who are considering law as an option? And I guess we could frame it this way. What would you say to your 16-year-old self, considering all the career options out there?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Look, it's an investment. It's the hell of an investment. Mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, all the LY words, right? Like, it is truly an investment financially. If you want to make this commitment, you better be sure that this is what you want. And another way for me to put it is that you got to be hungry for this, because you're going to hit those moments in law school and certainly after law school where life happens and you hit that low point, because that is life. What's going to be your motivation then to get you up and go after this again? Because that low point could last a day, could last a week, hell, it could last a month, depending on how things are going in the rest of life and with that space that you're in. What's going to be your motivation to keep going? You got to be hungry for this. And if you don't have that desire, then I don't advise you to go this route. Doesn't mean you can't go there later. It doesn't mean things won't change. It's just that if you won't go after this with the full of your soul, because it's hard. It's a challenge, and it's the best word I can use to describe it. It can be very unrelenting. These white folks, they ain't gonna give you a break. Hell, some of our people ain't gonna give you a break. Teachers ain't gonna give you a pass. The bar exam ain't gonna give you a pass. These firms who are spending money on you ain't gonna give you a pass. You gotta be hungry for this. You gotta be willing to make sacrifices in order to make this work. So understanding that there is a commitment that is unlike any other commitment that you've made in life to anyone else, and certainly to yourself. If you're going to go after it, you got to understand that commitment, and you got to be all in on that commitment. The worst thing you can do is go through this, struggle, be unhappy, and then have those regrets. I know there are some lawyers that do have those regrets. They may not always voice it, but they certainly do have it. It's not easy. And you are bucking up against the system and the status quo. So if you're going to do that, you got to come correct, but you got to come ready for this fight. And you got to be mentally, emotionally, spiritually prepared to do battle day in and day out, because unfortunately it is still a battle. So yeah, I would say to my 16-year-old self, are you sure? Is this what you really want? And then I would have to go ask the $1 million question. Why? And if you can answer that to yourself, I think you're all right then. I think you have your answer whether or not this is the right path, but you got to be hungry for this.
Because, there are easier ways to make a living. If your desire is to put in 20 years in an industry and then retire with a full pension, you would have to be very creative if you're going to use law to accomplish that purpose, And congratulations to you, Sean, now an associate at a prestigious law firm. Talk to us about, that journey. What led to the change and the shift in,
Yeah, the journey was arduous, but rewarding and a lot of fun, because I did start as a public defender. I spent 5.5 years as a public defender, and I loved and hated every minute of it. I love our clients. I can't stand our clients. I love the work, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, a lot of cases. But like I said earlier, we learned so much. I learned so much from so many incredible lawyers, from just some of the experiences I had, some of the failures I've had. So the journey has been hard, but ever so rewarding. Just real quick, public defenders need to get paid more. I'm just going to plug that in right now. If you're going to overwork them, at least make them fairly compensated, put them on par with DAs at the very least, but they should be getting paid more, because the odds are stacked against them. And the work that we do, and I say we because I'm always going to be a public defender, you can't compare it. And they protect a lot of our freedoms. First Amendment, Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, like the list goes on. The freedoms that we enjoy, public defenders protect that for the most part. And so I got to a point this year where I started thinking about getting another job, because being a public defender, in a way, for me, got too difficult, and not in a healthy way. I was getting very short with clients. I was getting very aggravated. I was unhappy. And it was because the caseload was so high that I could not give the time that was necessary for each case and for each person. I didn't have that time anymore. And I just felt like I wasn't my best self. And so I wanted to remove myself before I became jaded, before I became angry, before I became a shell of who I really am and want to be. And so I thought about just moving to another sister public defense organization, just to kind of give me a little reprieve. I would start over new with a fresh caseload, and I would slowly build myself up. So that would give me some breathing room. And they had smaller case sizes. So I think that would have helped. And I would have been around more people of color, and I would have been in a space that I would have felt more comfortable with, more understanding, more accepting. So that for me was also better. But a former legal aid attorney who used to work in the same Manhattan office I used to work in, we missed each other by a few years. He had started a law firm with another public defender from another sister organization. And these two brothers got together, understanding that, look, we can do the business just as well as anybody else. And we can do it while having a safe, secure environment and positive environment that will allow people to grow. And we can make it people of color. And so word got around that I was looking for a new job. These partners heard about it. And we had a real conversation about why I should go work for them, and why that would be the right move, and why I would want to work for them. In that conversation, I think, and maybe let me use a stronger word, I believe that years from now, when I look back, that will be probably the best conversation I've ever had. And it might be the one that really changes the trajectory of life. I believe that I will have that conversation. Hopefully I'll be back on this platform here with you to say that. But I got to a place where I had the skills now. And that was part of the conversation the partners and I had. It's like, bro, you have the skills. How many trials did you do? I was like, 10 plus. Yeah, most people don't do 10 plus. You did 2 in the last 3 months. How many cases did you have? 85 when I left. How many cases have you done in the last 5 years? I don't know, thousands. It's like, think about what you have done for those cases. How many times did you write? How many times were you up in court? How many times did you research an issue? You're ready for this next step. And so the journey, unbeknownst to me, because, we can't always see the stairwell in the darkness, right? I've been building towards this moment and I didn't even realize this. So it got to a point where just, don't fight the universe is what I say to myself. The universe aligned and was like, here's an opportunity to be in a safe space and a positive space for growth with a bunch of people that understand what it's like to have been in your shoes because they were there not too long ago. And the skills that you've been working on that you didn't even take a second to appreciate and value and speak your own gratitudes, to bring it back to the beginning of the show, they've all led you here. So you're in a good space and you're at the right place at the right time to move forward. So the journey has one that's been filled with ups and downs, incredibly hard, but incredibly rewarding. And it's just nice to take a moment, even on this platform in this moment, to just be like, yeah, all that hard work paid off. All those late nights paid off. All that sacrifice paid off. And it put me in a position I'm in now to take full advantage of that and keep growing as an attorney, keep growing as Sean Farrow and move forward. So it's not easy on this path, but it's worth it.
Awesome, man. Sean, I'm going to ask you to share, and let me say how proud I am of all your small wins leading up to where you are now.
Thank you.
I'm very happy for you, man. Please share all your handles and let us know if you have anything upcoming in terms of workshops, etc., that you want people to tap into as well.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter and on Instagram at _Sean Farrow ESQ. That is my Twitter handle and my IG. You can also check me out. I'm going to send the link to Ryan, but you can also check me out. I got 4 town hall discussions coming up in October. The first one is this October 5th. We're going to talk about cannabis in the city, the impact of legalization, licensing, and social equity in the cannabis industry. October 12th is going to be on the importance of serving on a jury selection. So many times people of color, especially here in the city, we try to get ourselves out of serving on a jury duty, but it's so important because so many of our brothers and sisters are usually the defendants. So it's important to have our voices heard in those jury deliberations rooms. So October 12th, the importance of serving on a jury. That brother who's presenting is a dope brother named Will Soden from the Vera Institute. So be sure to check him out. October 19th, we're going to talk about bail reform, the good, the bad, the ugly of bail reform and why it's necessary. So check that out. And the last one we're doing this month, October 26th, is going to be on immigration. We know a lot of our brothers and sisters from Central and Southern America are being bused, sometimes flown up here. And it's a very dire situation, but we need to take care of them. So learn all about what's going on with immigration here in the city and how we can help and how we're going to move forward here. So that's where you can find me at all this month. And if you ever need anything, Hamilton Clarke, we're a dope law firm. We're all people of color. I love the work we do. We do anything from civil to criminal and everything in between. And we obviously do cannabis law. But please be sure to check us out. That's all I got.
Awesome, man. And I'll put it in the notes. Sean, so very proud of you and your journey, man. And I'll be sure to put in that ways people can connect. And I'll likely be putting this out within the next few days. So hopefully I will add one of the flyers as well with the upcoming workshop that you're doing as well. Sean Farrow, associate at Hamilton Clarke, public defender, put a lot of years in. advocate, a volunteer with young people, a tutor as well, doing a lot for the community. We're so proud of your journey, man. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Waterword podcast.
Thank you, brother, for having me. It's been a pleasure, Brian. Always good to see you, brother. And keep
Same
the work
here,
up.
man.
I love what you're doing. Thanks for creating the
Appreciate
space,
it.
brother.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks and blessings on your journey, man. And we'll be in touch again soon. We'll
Likewise,
be
brother.
glad to have you back to share more on your journey.
Lovely. Thank you, brother.
Will
Be
do,
well.
man. Will do.